You ever wonder why some people just seem to get richer and richer, while other people, they work their tails off but just can't seem to get ahead? Well, Robert Kiyosaki's legendary book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, says the answer isn't about your salary. It's all about your mindset. Today, we're going to dive into the one core story from that book that has totally flipped the script for millions of people on how to think about money.
So the whole book is built around this really fascinating idea. Kiyosaki basically had two dads. His poor dad was his actual father, a super smart, highly educated guy with a PhD who was the head of education for the entire state of Hawaii. Then there was his rich dad, who was his best friend's father. This guy never even made it past the 8th grade, but he ended up becoming one of the wealthiest men in all of Hawaii.
And when it came to money, whoa, they were on completely different planets. Imagine being a young kid hearing these two polar opposite ideas. One dad is telling you, the love of money is the root of all evil, and the very same day the other dad is saying, no, the lack of money is the root of all evil. That crazy contrast forced him to really think, to compare the two, and in the end, to choose his own path.
And look, this wasn't just a simple difference of opinion. It was a total clash of worldviews. And that fundamental disagreement ended up shaping every piece of advice they gave, laying out two totally different blueprints for life.
This right here breaks it down perfectly. Poor dad's advice was what most of us hear, right? Go to school, get a safe job, basically learn how to be a great employee. Rich dad's advice, the complete opposite. He said to study hard so you could find a good company to buy. One preached playing it safe and avoiding risk. The other said you need to learn how to manage risk. And this just nails the mindset shift. Poor dad's go-to phrase was, "I can't afford it." That's a statement. It's a full stop. It shuts your brain down. But rich dad wouldn't let him say that. Instead, he had to ask a question. How can I afford it? Now, that doesn't mean you go out and buy everything. But what it does is it forces your brain to turn on, to start looking for creative solutions. It's like a workout for your financial mind.
So why does all of this matter so much? Because according to Rich Dad, if you follow that conventional path, you get stuck in a trap. A lifelong cycle of just struggling to get by that he famously called the rat race.
So what is the rat race? Well, it's this endless loop that's powered by two big emotions, fear and desire. First, it's the fear of not being able to pay your bills that makes you get a job. But then, as soon as you get that paycheck, desire kicks in. You start thinking about all the cool stuff you can buy. And that leads to this pattern where making more money just means spending more money, trapping you in this cycle of get up, go to work, pay bills, and do it all over again. You never really get ahead.
And this is that path, laid out perfectly. It starts with poor dad's advice, get a good education so you can find a safe job. Then you start making some money, so you get a car, a house. As you get raises and promotions, your income goes up, but so do your taxes and all your expenses. You're working harder than ever, but you feel like you're just running on a hamster wheel. And then, what do? We pass that exact same advice on to our kids, and the whole cycle starts over.
Okay, so how do you actually escape this thing? Well, Rich Dad's first lesson is probably the most important one, and it completely flips your relationship with work on its head. And it all goes back to a story from when Kiyosaki was only 9 years old.
So as a kid, Robert and his best friend Mike got told they couldn't go to another friend's beach house because they were poor kids. Ouch. He was so hurt and frustrated, he went to his poor dad and just asked him straight up, "Dad, how do I get rich?" His dad, being a school teacher, just said, "Son, I wish I knew. Use your head." But then he suggested they go talk to Mike's dad, the man who would become his rich dad.
So Rich Dad agrees to teach them, but he says, "Not in a classroom. You're going to work for me, and I'll teach you. The job? Dusting canned goods in his little convenience store for 3 hours every single Saturday. And the pay? Get ready for this. An absolutely mind-blowing 10 cents an hour."
You can imagine, after a month of this mind-numbing work, giving up his Saturdays for just 30 cents, Robert was furious. He felt totally used and was about to quit, and that was exactly what Rich Dad was waiting for. He told him that he was letting life push him around, just like it does to most adults who feel trapped by their job and a tiny paycheck. And right then and there, Rich Dad dropped the bombshell. He said the poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. All that anger and frustration Robert was feeling, that's the same feeling millions of adults have every single day. The lesson was to stop letting fear and desire run the show and instead to use your brain to find a smarter way.
And then, to really hammer the point home, Rich Dad made an offer that sounded completely insane. He said, "Now, get back to work. Except this time, I'm not going to pay you anything." Which, of course, begs the question, how on earth could working for free be the secret to getting rich?
Well, by taking away that paycheck, Rich Dad was doing something brilliant. He was forcing them to stop thinking like employees, just focused on that hourly wage. He wanted them to open their eyes and start looking for the opportunities that were hiding in plain sight.
And sure enough, they found one. They saw the store manager ripping the front covers off old comic books and tossing the rest in a box. See, the distributor only needed the covers back to give a credit. So the boys asked if they could have the old comics, and she said sure. So they took all these free comics, opened up a library in an empty room in Mike's basement, and started charging the neighborhood kids 10 cents to come in and read as many comics as they wanted for 2 hours. They even hired Mike's little sister to be the librarian. And this little side hustle started making them $9.50 a week, way more than their old wages.
But here's the real magic of what they did. They had created an asset. And an asset in Rich Dad's world is just something that puts money into your pocket. Their little comic book library was making them money even when they weren't there. They weren't trading their time for dollars anymore. They had finally learned the first, biggest lesson. They had made money work for them.
So, that simple story from childhood, it's literally the foundation for everything Rich Dad teaches. It shows that real, lasting wealth isn't about landing a high-paying job. It's about building a solid foundation of financial education first. Because as Rich Dad always said, money without financial intelligence is money soon gone. I mean, this is why you hear those crazy stories about lottery winners or pro athletes who make millions and then end up completely broke. They knew how to make a ton of money, but nobody ever taught them how to keep it, so it just vanished. So, at the end of the day, the big secret is right here. Building wealth is not about how big your paycheck is. It's about how much of that money you can keep, and this is the important part, how much of it you can put to work creating more assets that make money for you. That right there is the fundamental difference.
And that brings us right to the big question the book asks every single person who reads it. A question we should probably all ask ourselves. Take a hard look at your own life and your own finances and ask, are you spending your life working for money? Or have you started building a system where your money is finally, truly working for you?